Hi, and welcome back to season 2 of Building Pathways to Healthy Minds, a Child Builders podcast. We took a break over the summer, but now we are back and ready to learn more about parenting and creating mentally healthy environments where children and families thrive. I'm Priscilla Bagley, your host, and for this podcast, I chatted with Jay Woodward, a good friend of mine and professor of human development and family studies at Texas A&M. Every time I talk to Jay's students, they mention that he is absolutely one of their favorite professors. He deeply understands family systems and what makes families strong, both from studying the theories that social scientists use, but also as a father of two. In this conversation, we talked about balancing theory and practice. In other words, knowing what the books say we should do as parents, but also paying attention to our own intuition and awareness of what our kids need and what works best. I hope you learn as much as I did and enjoy this conversation about what makes families healthy and strong. I am so excited to be here with Jay Woodward, a good friend, and we are going to talk today about some of his classes at A&M. He's an A&M professor, and just thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, Priscilla, thank you so much for inviting me on. And just for the listeners out there, I do teach within the Department of Educational Psychology at Texas A&M University. The Department of Educational Psychology offers graduate level programs in areas of emphasis such as special education, bilingual education, counseling, and school psychology. My area is learning sciences, and learning sciences has a couple of neat programs. One of them is the developmental sciences, looking at child and adolescent development and development throughout the lifespan. Another one focuses on creativity and cognition. To give a background, the College of Education and Human Development at Texas A&M has largely been one of the largest producers of teachers who go out and make a difference in Texas classrooms, from special education to bilingual education to general education. That's really been our motto at Texas A&M. CEHD is transforming lives. And I find that a lot of what we do in the classroom is equipped to help students succeed in that mission in really these classroom-based fields.
Well, do we want to talk a little bit about Duvall's family systems theory?
There's lots of different theories that examine what makes a family effective, what constitutes a strong family. And there's the Duvall family systems theory that really looks at families as if they're going through different stages of life. And it's a really interesting theory that says families at different points in time need different resources, need different people to come in and support them. And so we can look at when a family is formed. Duvall says a family formed when two people come together and enter into a committed relationship. I think now in 2025, we look at that and say, well, is that marriage? It might not be marriage. We could certainly have families that form outside of traditional societal bonds or institutions. But almost immediately from there, that next stage is that childbearing. Now, children can come into our life through a variety of different means, through surrogacy, through adoption, through conventional means, a lot, fostering. But the notion is that families go through these phase transitions. And so the family is fundamentally changed when you introduce someone new into the dynamic. Right now, a family starts off as a dyad. A dyadic relationship and dyadic relationships are strengthened through communication, through a lot of different aspects. But what happens when you add a vertices to that? You add that child, right? And so now routines are off. Roles have to be figured out. Who is primarily bringing in an income? Who is the nurturer? Is that split? Is that shared? Is all of these discussions? The notion that Duvall says is families have now gone into a phase transition. So when you come together, and if it's a marriage, the honeymoon years, right? You get to travel and enjoy each other's company and build that relationship. But then, boom, everything changes once you institute that first insert. And so Duvall says that families change. Just like we grow and develop, we don't ever revert back to previous stages. You don't ever see ourselves shrinking or losing capabilities. Development follows a pattern of progression, a timing and a tempo. Well, Duvall says families do the exact same thing. And so you get to that next stage. And then once you have them, you've got to raise them. And this is the longest period in Duvall's theory. It allows for more children to be entered into that family system. And let's talk about what makes strong families. And there's a lot of people who say, all right, so in this time when families are changing and you have new demands that are being brought on by the adding of family members, The number one thing that predicts and the data supports that families will function effectively is communication. There's lots of research, and this is not even just recent, it goes back to the 80s, in which communication is clear, open, honest, and frequent. Clear, open, honest, and frequent. They can share their real feelings. They are able to communicate, not having to hide, not having to mask, not having to avoid, but communication. If you look at all of this, and if families break up or disintegrate, and what makes strong families and families that are able to stick through and adapt to these life changes, communication is that number one.
Wow. The biggest predictor.
Biggest predictor.
Wow.
Biggest
That's
predictor.
wild.
It's not socioeconomic status. It's not how much money someone makes. It is communication. And this is another theory. It comes in what makes strong families. And a lot of people have researched individual aspects. Another big aspect to this as well is what we call commitment to the family. So within a family, every family member feels that they are valued, that they're supported, that they're sustained. And so therefore, if you feel like your family supports you, you're willing to support them. We call these tangible or intangible exchanges. Kids aren't able to support their family through finances, but what they can give is perhaps words of affirmation. They can provide love or show respect for. And so here we're saying this is equitable. How are exchanges handled? Tangible exchanges, intangible exchanges. Do families communicate love, respect? Are they clear and they're open and they're so these two things really go together. So commitment really is, do you feel valued? Do you feel supported? Do you feel sustained? If so, then you will monitor your family status relationships and you'll work to actively maintain them. I'm sure you never argue with your husband at all.
No, totally.
No, right. So, but
Great
if you did,
communication.
hypothetically, if you did, you might sense, you know what, we're having a rift right now. We're not in a good place. And so I want to work on this relationship. So again, I feel valued. I don't feel necessarily validated or supported. I want to address this and I want to work to monitor and maintain that relationship. That's where commitment comes in.
The commitment.
Those two things are the two biggest factors.
Okay.
The big thing that arises out of those is how do families meet normal or abnormal life challenges or changes? It's called crisis management. And crisis management deals with how a family deals with changes within a family structure. Maybe it's the loss of job. Think about how your family, if you're listening, might respond to the loss of an income. Would you have resources that you could tap into within your family? Could you search and find resources in a community? This is where community comes in. What resources exist? And so here, crisis management is as much how does a family respond? That might mean someone taking on a different role. Does that mean that 16-year-old gets a job and provides extra income? Does that mean that someone goes back to work? Does that mean that someone stops working? Does that mean that we rely on extended family to come in? Do we move? All of those. So how do you meet with that within the family? But then do you have resources? Do you have connections? And so how you tap into and respond to normal life events, but also these abnormal acute life stressors. And all that goes on during this period of time. Then I think families have an identity through two last things, routines and traditions. Routines are day-to-day things that just describe your family. Maybe it's that my family goes to church on Sunday and Wednesday. And every time that there is a gathering, it could be that we have family game night on Saturday. It could mean that we watch the Houston Texans on Sunday afternoon and we all sit around and do that. It could be
a good tradition.
Right. You have chores. Did you have a chore? I don't know. What was your favorite chore or least favorite chore growing up?
For me, and it's still my least favorite. I give it to Chris all the time is dusting.
Oh, yes.
I don't know why. I think it was my mom's least favorite, so it was handed down to me.
So you have chores and you have day-to-day responsibilities. You have schedules. You have things that tie you to the family. I'm about to leave to take my son to soccer practice. He has that. And so we look at those and how we deal and make time for it and prioritize those things that provide structure to our family. Structure within a family environment is critical. The other thing, and I can't, I had a smaller family. I feel like I kind of missed out growing up, but I know a lot of people have cousins. And so family reunions, big traditions. We are doing the matching t-shirt thing for the first time this summer. I will turn 50 this summer and we're going on a cruise and we all have matching shirts. What traditions do you honor and celebrate? And
Mm-hmm.
maybe it's a matriarch and you go over and you celebrate her birthday every year. Maybe, I mean, here in America, we celebrate Thanksgiving, and who
Yeah.
makes the Thanksgiving turkey and how do you gather? For those of the Christian faith, Christmas, and for those of the Jewish faith, Hanukkah, and all of those represent these traditions that
Yeah.
are passed down. We carry them down. They are things that provide heritage and history, not just the routine of this family, but the larger community of families that have come before you, the generations, the extended families beyond. So in this child rearing, this all is integrated and mixed in.
Mm.
Yes, you have these intangible and tangible exchanges. Yes, you have this notion of building commitment through communication, through the establishment of routines, and the meeting of challenges through crisis management and the honoring and respecting of traditions. And all of that, then, what happens then when kids leave? And I
Mm.
talk to students all the time who are the last one to leave their house. And they're the
That
ones
was
who
me.
parents are calling all the time, that they're like, my baby has left the nest. And so for Duvall, that changes again. But we know that within family systems, there's always a family or a family member that doesn't fit that pattern. That
Yeah.
theory doesn't necessarily apply to. And so that's the hard part of what we have in the social sciences. We have a lot of best practices. We have a lot of tried and true methods that have worked in different environments for different people across different generations and locales, but it doesn't work for everyone.
Well, and I think I had a podcast, one of our first ones we did where we talked about empathy and connection in
Yeah,
families. And we talked about how that's just messy. Like what you're talking about today, like you said earlier, it's not a scientific, perfect lab result. This is messy. This is each family has stuff, and you can do everything you know is perfect. And then there's a crisis, and something totally changes. There's no way for us to just completely control this, which is why I think I like education and family systems because it's organic and
yeah,
it's messy and it's creative and we can make it right later, right? We can be like, man, I messed that up. Okay, I can still go back and make it right. It's not
yeah.
a lab test, but it's beautiful and complicated.
And it's why we do it. It's because of that mess, but in that mess, you can create beauty. As parents, we have our own practices, but I'm going to have to challenge myself with what is the parenting theory? Do I agree or disagree with it? Did it work for my child? Did it not work for my child? I've got two kids. I've got a 16-year-old and I've got a near 12-year-old. And I will say that the parenting styles that I have to adopt for each of those are very different. There's parents who are going to go through that, and probably parents who are listening right now who are dealing with that right
Yeah,
now. So how do you use, these are theories, but throw theories out the window when it comes to your own child with what you
absolutely.
know works the best. And that blending of balancing between factual and actual, I think, is our greatest job of educators. We can equip them with knowledge, but then they have to be able to intuitively put it into practice. Sometimes you go against theory. Sometimes you go
Yep,
against what the experts are saying because you know in your heart, intuitively, it's right for your child.
exactly.
That's that reflective real-time decision making. We don't want to graduate students who are strictly analytical,
Yep.
strictly factual, strictly textbook based. We want that intuitive logic, knowledge, and decision making that comes from our frontal lobe, right? That we
Hmm.
spend decades of our life developing. And
Right.
we have to make a decision how we're going to parent in that moment. So that's the notion of this. I'm really excited to see that. And yes, it's theories, but it
But
expands.
what does that look like practically? Not just head knowledge, but like, let's see as close as we can. What does this look like in real life when you're making those decisions in the moment?
Correct.
Love it.
Correct.
So, as a parent and a professor of these kinds of classes, what's your biggest takeaway?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. And I often have my students, I write reflections. Here's the theory we talked about. Do you see it in your own life? I think it's changed my parenting perspective. I
Hmm.
think that it has changed me from knowing that there are individual differences that require different responses, that not one theory fits every child perfectly. And it's hard for me to be knowledgeable about adolescent development and have a teenager and a pre-teenager
Yeah.
and look at these things, and I can point to this and tell my son, you're doing this, the textbook says you're doing that. They're not going to listen to that. That's not.
Right.
And so you can't be the know-it-all. You can't be the sage on a stage is what a lot of people call professors. You can't
Mm,
attack it from that angle. You have to attack it with empathy. You have to attack
yeah.
it with understanding. I think I've been able to take information I have, but be able to put it into practice, but by softening the blow, by using it as a true, what we would say, teachable moment, not from
Yeah.
a, I'm telling you this because this is my knowledge and this is going to benefit you later on. But I'm telling you this because, man, I've seen this theory, I've taught on this theory, but now I'm looking at you as you're going through some of these aspects. And it's really informed by the dynamic understanding of that theory.
Mm,
And it's not just black and white. You asked what's my biggest takeaway. Yeah, there are some that fall directly into the pattern. You can look at that and say, that is that.
yeah.
But how many kids break that mold or fall outside of that or don't fit within that bell curve perfectly? And I think that's the biggest thing that I've had. Yeah, I've got the knowledge, but in my own family environment, it hasn't always been that things go as a textbook would predict or plan.
Absolutely. Wow. And I think we have this vision of who we're going to be, especially when we have all this knowledge. And do you think you're harder on yourself when you don't have that like perfect textbook answer to something?
Maybe critical. Yeah. I mean, I
Yeah.
think that would be the greater responsibility. I mean, go walk into any Barnes and Noble and, how many self-help parenting tip, I haven't opened one in a while. A lot of them will pick theories that they think or approaches, practices. I mean, not everything has to be a formal theory that someone has researched and written papers on. I love a lot of what exists now, podcasts and blogs and things in which people who want to share their practices are able to do so without having to publish something. And that's why I love talking and discussing these things with you, because I think we are, as a community of learners, looking for, man, I took child development 25 years ago. I don't remember any of that. But I've got
Right.
a child now. Where can I go to find some of these resources? And so, you would ask, do you reflect? Yeah, you become a bit critical. Man, I missed that moment. I think a lot of that is this just passed me by. This was something that I could have said something, I could have spoken some knowledge into, or I could have been less technical and more parental, right?
Yeah.
Or less technical and more empathetic towards what someone was sharing. I mean, I think just as much as I'm an educator, I'm also a student, and I'm learning in the school of life just like everyone else is learning as well.
Yeah. I love that. Well, I appreciate it. I know you're leaving on a big trip tomorrow, so you making time means so much. And I
Absolutely.
always I always ask every guest if there's one thing that you'd want to leave with us, what would it be?
I hope that the takeaway that people have is that if they're going through tough things with their family,
Mm,
just know that if individuals are providing judgment or misdirection, that advice is advice. That
mm,
theories have use, but they don't always apply to every situation. You the best. You know your family the best. You know your child the best. Use your intuition and rely on that. The logic and all the other things will come behind.
mm. That's great. I needed to hear that too. So thank you.
Sure.
Appreciate it. All right. That's our episode for today. I truly enjoyed learning about Duvall's family systems theory and the key elements of strong families. I also can't stop thinking about that tension between what the experts say about parenting and what we know about our kids and our families, and how all of that needs to guide our parenting decisions. It's complicated, it's messy, but I'm glad that there are experts we can turn to when we have questions. This conversation was also a reminder to me that even experts in parenting and families sometimes aren't completely sure how to parent perfectly. We're all in this together. We're all doing the best we can. I hope you enjoyed today's conversation. You can leave us comments or questions. We'd love to hear from our listeners. Don't forget to subscribe to our podcast on Apple, Spotify, or YouTube. On our next episode, we will bring back Ann Friedman to talk more about mindfulness and how we can use it to parent better. Until then, stand strong, stay safe, and I'll see you next time.